Hey y'all, welcome to another fun episode of Interview with a Reader, and I'm here with one of my favorite authors, Haley. Hey,
Hi, Alexis. How are you doing?
I am good. Thank you so much for coming to talk to, well, us and me, so I can just I guess, fangirl this entire time, but super excited to get to talk to you.
Thank
So
you
I
so much for
think,
having me.
oh, no problem. I think the first thing that I want to dive into asking you is why you write horror. There's so many genres out there. What makes you want to do this one?
I think you should write what you want to read. So that's the easiest reason for me to be writing horror. It's just what makes sense for me. Like, I know that some writers are kind of like career writers. Like they have their thing. This is what I will write because, financial reasons, presentation reasons, etc. But it's just like I'm gonna write what I love. And that's horror.
That is a good answer. And it feels good when you're writing something that you do like, because otherwise you're just writing something, which is fine, but it's so more
It's not that's not for me. I get miserable because if I were writing stuff based on what I felt would be more successful, a Game in Yellow would have been about three men instead of three women.
and that would have been a very different book
It would
too.
have been a different book. Not that it would have been a bad book, but I'm just like people are more, I feel, tolerant of sexual situations involving multiple men than multiple women, as we've seen with the reactions to Bridgerton season five, which isn't even horror, but
I know, which is absolutely insane to me. It's just, it's insane to me. I hate it.
yeah.
So, talking about a game in horror, which was kind of where I found you because I saw it coming out, all of your posts about it got me so excited because the book cover is eye-catching, let's just be honest.
Oh yeah,
And I was like,
Carol, they gave me two options. One was like a little safer and one was this and more provocative. And I was just like, oh, we got to go for more provocative. And Carolyn did an amazing job.
when I was scrolling, I saw it and I was like, okay, this, I need it. I don't even care what it's about yet. Like, and then of course I found your other books and read those while I was waiting. But where, what inspired you to write this?
Well, so I had Carmen, Blanca, and Smoke as characters in my head that kind of like they grew out of some other thing. And I just was kind of writing conversations between them, just kind of like or things happening between them, but I didn't really have a story for them. I wasn't really sure where they belonged, and like different premises would pop up and I try to like see if they would stick and it just wouldn't work. And then uh sometime in summer, I think 2023. Yeah. Um I for whatever reason was just sitting and thinking about The King in Yellow, and I was like, okay, so you read it and it drives you mad one way or another. Um but what if like someone was there and kind of like pulled it away before it could have the effect on you? Like that would probably be a big like endorphin rush or adrenaline rush, just something that gets your blood pumping because it's a near kind of a near death experience in a way. And I was like, oh, that'd be very exciting because, and then just realize, oh my God, that's the story for these three. That's throw the king in yellow at them, these three messes and see what happens. And then I was just writing notes like immediately, and I started the book pretty shortly after that.
I love the idea of it because the King in Yellow and everything, it's horrifying to think about, but I think it's even worse being trapped, not fully and being pulled away. I don't know, just reading it, it made me so anxious because if they had not been pulled away halfway through it, like you know what's going to happen kind of, but
Right,
halfway, anything could happen.
right. We see it happen when like Smoke lets people read from it and doesn't, and like Blanca's like, hey, you usually stop Carmen before this, and she's like, but this isn't Carmen, is it?
So dark. I loved it. How
Well,
long do you think
that was the part I read at StokerCon that year, and it seemed to go over well.
how long did it take to I don't want to say finish exactly, but how long did it take to get through your book here before you're like, okay, I think this is almost done. I'm ready. Is it something that is a year or two, a couple of months? And then again, I've talked to some authors where some books it's quick and some books it's a go over it, go over it, go over it type thing.
Yeah, some books are multi-year problems that you're trying to solve. Other books just kind of come out very quickly. This one came out very quickly. I would say a couple months for the original version. The original version was a novella.
Ooh,
Um, and then once it got Simon and Schuster's interest, then we were like, let's expand this into a novel. So that took a bit longer.
interesting. That is pretty cool. I just lost my entire train of thought on that.
You're fine.
Um, so
I
I
wish every
recently,
book was that easy, honestly. Um, like I wish each one was just like, because I never feel like I'm coming up with things. I always feel like I'm discovering things. Like Stephen King had likened writing to archaeology. You're kind of just like things are getting a little clearer as you dust off the pieces. And it's like that's how it feels to me.
ooh, that is good. Because I'm not an author, of course, but when you guys sit down and you write this entire like story, I'm over here freaking out because I hate thesis sentences. So I can't even imagine how you guys are writing all this, wrapping it all into the like this entirely cohesive story. It's amazing.
It doesn't, they never start that like cohesive though. I mean, like that, because when I give you that time span, that's going back to it and making it look like you know what you're doing from the start now that you've finished. Um, and like there's a friend of mine who like we kind of had I come up with a comparison because she writes very differently. I overwrite and then cut away the stuff I don't need a lot of the time. And so I cut a Game in Yellow down to novella and then had to like expand again with different stuff because I had different ideas then of how I wanted certain things to go. Whereas she kind of like writes things very thinly and then kind of adds to them. And I
Ooh.
kind of compared it to like sculptor versus painter. And I just think and that's why I think it's important for writers to hear from a lot of different authors because one author could say, "Oh, do it this way," and that doesn't click with you, and like, and then you start to feel like, "Oh, do I not know how to write? Am I just doing everything wrong?" It's like, no, maybe there's another author who does stuff in a way that makes more sense for you, and you should take their advice because maybe they've already solved the problems you're having since you're both very similar writers.
That is exactly what I was about to ask you because that's one of the things that always blows my mind because some of the authors are like, we plan, we have this outline, and some of them are like, I'm finding out about the characters as you are, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, I'm kind of in between. I need an outline. I have to have my outline so that I have something to deviate from and rebel against as I go through writing the book. I
Do you
can't just
ever,
go from nothing, but I do need something there. But I'm usually going to be like, actually, I have a better idea past Hailey, so shut up. I'm going to do this now.
do you fight with any of your character deaths, or are you just like, it's time, you must be sacrificed?
It's hard because I feel bad, like I feel guilt over it. But the thing is, it's a matter of what's best for the story. And so I don't have points where I'm like trying to figure it out. Like I sometimes do come up with solutions, but sometimes when there's a way out, it's more tragic that they don't get there. And sometimes it's more tragic when there was no way out. Like it depends on the situation. Um, but yeah, I mean I feel bad and it sucks and sometimes I've cried over it, but I still go through with it because it's I owe it to the art. Like I can't because if I'm not being genuine, if I'm not being honest with what is best for the narrative, what's best for the art of it, then what the hell am I even doing? Like I could be writing like, just very soft, like cozy, whatever things. And I'm like, there's a place for that, but not everything should be that. But I don't feel comfortable doing that because I'm always like, okay, where's the lie then? Where's the trick? When's this all gonna turn, when else all this gonna turn terrible? Um, if I was gonna just change things because of what I want. Sometimes my stories don't go the way I want them to. It's a matter of what's best for the book. Because if it was always just what I wanted, then I'd always just do whatever's easiest for me. Like, and that sometimes goes in a lighter direction. Like the project I'm working on right now, earlier this week, I had to write two chapters that were a little lighter than some of the others, a little honestly got a little silly at a couple parts, but I was like, it's what's necessary for the book because of what's happening with these characters right now and because of how dark things are about to get. And I was just like, and so I was like, I don't know if this is good. And it's just like, just fucking finish it. Just fucking finish the chapter and then you can get back to your miserable stuff.
But you're right though. Like there is a place for the cozies and the warm and everything. But for me, when I'm reading a book, if I was reading one where everybody was just basically getting off scot-free, even though it's fiction, even though stuff that's happening that would never happen in real life is happening, it would feel fake to me. It wouldn't feel real and I
Right.
wouldn't feel invested.
Right. It's same for me.
Absolutely. That's a good one. One of the other more recent ones I read with of yours was Teenage Girls Can Be Demons. And I've actually just passed it on to the next person who's going to read and annotate in it, so they should have it soon. But oh my gosh, I like there was some stories after I finished it, I just had to sit there and close the book for a minute because I'm just like the very
that's
first
that's
story
how
had
you
me.
want to be with a short story collection because like I need if I'm feeling like I can just go on to the next story, then I'm gonna forget what happened in that previous story. It's gonna get washed over by the next one. So I like to take a moment when I'm reading those. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
And I,
interrupt you.
oh no, it's okay. And your first story in that I'm used to a good first story in a collection or an anthology because they drag you in, you want more. But there was just something so, well, explosive about that one. I literally sat there and felt my skin tingling. I'm like, this is so real, but not really. You know what I mean? Which, of
No,
course, trying not to spoil anything, it just was magical.
yeah, in the worst way.
No, I was like, I literally want to put my boots on and kick somebody's door in right now. This is
Oh, well,
crazy.
good. That's the point of the book. That's like I know the stories are very different. Some of them are empowering, some of them are tragic, some of them are kind of a weird place in between. But the point of the book is like, yeah, just I mean, one of the things I hope from the book is, yeah, go kick some ass. I mean, the point of the book has been made by the people who feel the title is something to joke about. It's like, what do you mean can be? It's like, yeah, I know, I have three daughters, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you're exactly the problem. You're exactly the reason that I put this collection together because you need to stop messing with teenage girls, stop looking down on them.
They're not weak. They're not nothing.
Right, exactly. Like teenage girls can be demons. If you keep messing around, they will surprise you in ways you don't like.
Even right now, us talking about it, I've got chills. Honestly, might have been one of my favorite books this year. But
Oh, thank you.
how did you decide which stories you were going to put in that? Did you have a lot more? Did you have some that you're like, okay, this one fits, this one doesn't? Was it hard?
Yes, because I realized as I had pitched three collection ideas to Titan. This was the one they chose. I was glad for that. This was the one I really wanted to do. Um, but and I pitched it with like I think five or six stories. Like it definitely had like Unkindly Girls, Benny Rose, those were in there. Um, but then as I was going through, okay, let's get to building this because I want to write, I had a couple original ones written. I wanted to write a couple more original ones. And then I wanted to compile reprints. And I was looking over the stories and I didn't realize just how many coming of age horror stories I'd written over the years. There were quite a lot. And I'd said to people last year, like, there's enough to do a second volume. Um, if there was interest in that. Because I just have so many. So it was some hard cuts. Like a couple of them were like, yeah, I'm probably not going to reprint that. And even if there was a second, I won't. There are other ones that like they were hard to cut. There were a couple like favorites. Life Begins at Injection was one I had put in the pitch, but when I was putting the whole book together, I was like, this doesn't fit with the other stories. It really like because it wasn't like okay, the best of like that wasn't what I was doing. It had to be cohesive. Like you were saying before, they have to cohese together. They have to make sense together. So there were a couple stories that I consider a couple of my favorites that just I was like, there's not space for this because it doesn't make sense with the other stories as they are. There's just like because I feel there's a way you put together a collection where the stories kind of can flow into each other a little bit. Sometimes you separate that because you don't want too much to them to be too similar, but you want there to feel like you're on a journey from the beginning
Yeah.
to the end. And I do think this book accomplishes that. Like once I'd figured out what was going to be in it and where, but some stuff where it was like it was in there and it was getting moved around, and it was just like this just doesn't work. There's actually a whole almost novella length story that I wrote for the book that didn't go in because I was just like this just doesn't it was too much with Benny Rose and one of the other stories. I can't remember which, but I was just like, it needs its own space. So we'll see what happens with that in the future.
Hmm.
But it's just like it's sad, it sucks, but again, you have to do what's best for the art.
Oh, absolutely. Another one of my favorite stories. I actually read this story twice immediately after I finished it. And I'm so bad at short story titles and music titles,
I'll know
so
which one
forgive
you're
me.
talking about.
But it was about the hopscotch game.
Hopscotch for keeps.
I was like, I went into it thinking I knew what was kind of going on. It really, really hardcore reminded me of I'm trying to think. In the Dark Tower, when Eddie basically like is back in time with the basketball and everything that was going on when they were playing a game, I was like, "Oh, is this kind of like that?" It went in a completely different direction, and I was so glued to that story. I was like, "What is happening here?" And then I finished it. I sat there for a second, and I was like, "Okay, I got to read this again. This is just insane. How did you come up with that?"
um, so there was a song. I don't know the artist. I don't know what song it was. It was something my wife was playing in the car years ago. But it was a misheard lyric. Um, I don't know what the actual lyric was, but um, the what I heard was, "I've got a hopscotch kid I've caught in a jar." And I started to think about that. And she told me what the actual lyric was, but I was like, I've already got, I already got what I want out of this. So yeah, that was the seed. And from there, like the story kind of grew. I thought about this part of New York I'd visited when I was a kid. And there was a blacktop park there and just kind of kids from the neighborhood kind of just coming in and out to play. And it just grew from that.
I really thought I knew what was happening in that short story. Like, and it really is a short story, but every time I go back and think of it, it seems so long in my head, kind of like the hopscotch game. But I'm just I got to the end of it and I'm not spoiling the ending, but I just sat there and I was like, what did I just read? I thought was going on. It was just so crazy to me. I loved it. Might have been one of my favorites in it,
I
honestly.
think it's the second shortest story in the book.
That's insane.
Yeah, I think
Um,
the shorter one, the only one shorter than that, I think, is Last Leaf of an Ursine Tree.
Did and of course I know all of them are your stories, so you love all of them. But in the book, do you have a favorite that you left or put in there
that I that is in the book.
that is in the book?
Okay. I mean, it feels like cheating to say Benny Rose the Cannibal King, because it's a novella. So I should probably not choose that. I should probably choose an actual short story. Um, I don't know. I mean, I know other people's favorites like Unkindly Girls. I don't know. I'm really proud of I'm really proud of Long Flesh of the Law. Um, I don't I think I really love The Many Sins of Clara Greenstone though. Um, which is funny because that one's not bleak. Um, it's horrible, dark things happen in that story, but I think it's a very hopeful story. Um, and I find that more, what's the word I want? I find more positivity in victory over horrible things than just pretending horrible things don't happen.
Oh, absolutely. And I absolutely agree because even though horrible things did happen, it ends up being like you get to scream yay instead of just being like, okay, great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, that is good. So you do like, tell me, how do I want to word this? Even though it was a novella, how did you come up with that character exactly? Because clearly you have some investment into the Benny Rose.
Oh yeah. Benny Rose is such a weird thing because like I had that going for, I mean, that was God, 8 years ago when I started coming up with that. Um, so there's a funny thing where like a common writing advice, especially in screenplays, is is merge characters. You probably have more characters than you need, put them together. And I'm like, Benny Rose is a perfect example of the opposite. Because Benny Rose was a much more contradictory, complicated monster at one point, and I was not sure how. There's a point where I was like, I'm not sure what to do with this, and um, the idea came up just like, okay, take some parts, that's Benny Rose, other parts, that's some other monster for another story. And that's kind of what happened. But funny enough, once Benny was split from those other elements, which were a bit more ghost-like, even though he's still a ghost, um, he kind of grew. It's almost like pruning a tree. You clip some parts of it, and it grows even bigger. And that's kind of what happened with Benny because he grew all these stories around him, all these bits of stories he'd stolen because he was built up as this urban legend in the town in Blackwood. Um, and so yeah, that kind of I had Desiree, I had Gabrielle, I had Jesse and Sierra. I had the main girls, I had him, I had the location, and I was just at Glade Street, and I was just trying to figure out how to make it all work together on Halloween night. And I had like a longer span. It's like, oh, this takes place over the course of days, and they're in and out and such. And I was just like, it's not working for me. And then for some reason, when the originally I finally wrote a draft back in 2019 when Unnerving Books had a an open call for novellas that were kind of supposed to be either set in the 80s or kind of just 80s style, like as if like something you found on a video store to rent. And for some reason that made everything click. It's like set it in the 80s. That works. Like then I could see it. It's like, oh, of course. Then it felt obvious. It's like it's a slasher. Of course it should be set in the 80s. That just feels sensible to me. And then it just took off from there. Um, but yeah, it was very important to me because it it's serving two purposes as far as just like, looking at how young people, especially teenage girls, are treated as if they're parasites or a problem, and it just disgusts me. And how the future will eat the past, or the past will eat the future, I should say, um, and not think about the consequence of that because it's like, well, at least I'm fed. And the other is just that nostalgia is so dangerous. And it's funny considering that it was for a call that was, obviously pandering a little bit to nostalgia, but like the whole motivation of some of the character stuff in there is we like things the way they were, and that's all we care about. And yeah, things are changing, but like we're just going to keep things the way we want it to be. It's just like nostalgia is so dangerous. It can so easily convince you that the past was wonderful because it was the past. It doesn't have to have actually been good. It doesn't have to have treated you well. It's just familiar. And we see that with art too, because people like, wow, everything's like nothing good ever comes out anymore. Everything sucks. And it's like things were better, you know, insert time period here. It's like, okay, when you're distant from a time period, that's when you can kind of gather up the best ofs. And suddenly it seems like, oh, it was
You
only
don't remember
great
the
stuff.
bad parts
Right. And
anymore.
I'm like, I remember, and people are like, oh, nowadays, now it's big 90s nostalgia. Now we're a few years after I wrote Penny Rose. And people are doing the same thing to the 90s, where it's just like, oh, like think of all these classic movies that came out from the 90s, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, I grew up in the 90s. Okay. We had so much dog shit back in the 90s, music, movies, books, everything. There was garbage everywhere because that's what happens all the time. And at some point in the future, people are like, oh, I really miss the classic stuff from the 2020s. Like that's
Oh
going to
my
happen. It's
goodness. I'm gonna
inevitable.
throw up.
I know. And that sounds ridiculous considering what we're living through right now, but it's going to happen.
Absolutely. Somebody is going to remember in the distant future some of the good stuff that did happen. Like, because
Right.
there are good books, there
Yeah.
are good
Yeah.
movies.
And that's what I mean though. They're going to act like, oh, it was just all good. Everything was great from the 2020s. And now we're in the let's say 50s, 2050s, and everything sucks. So it's just like, come on. There are going to be kids in the 2050s who are like, I was born in the wrong era. And it's a bunch of like 2020s fashion or whatever. And it's just because that's what happens. I was shocked the first time I saw that for the 90s, and people were like, and admittedly cool stuff that they were showing, like the how we had like the Game Boys and N64 that had like the clear and the phones with the clear
Yes.
plastic so you could see the circuitry. That's a cool thing. I like that aesthetic, but don't pretend that was the 90s. That one thing was the 90s, but it's like still it was like 2012 on Tumblr, and there were people who never been alive in the, well, I mean, they probably were too young to remember the 90s, but they were there. And just being like, oh, this is, I was born in the wrong era. I should have been born 10 years earlier so I experienced the 90s. Like if you'd done that, you would have just been miserable in the 90s. You know what's happening in the 90s? A bunch of kids going like, I wish I'd been born in the 70s. They were watching like stuff from the 70s and wearing bell bottoms and such. I remember that in school.
Listen, I love 80s music. I love the stuff I
Same.
see from the 80s, but I know absolutely they struggled just as much as we did on stuff.
Exactly.
It wasn't always good.
Right. I say that like I listen to a lot of 80s music. Like a lot of my favorite horror movies are from the 80s. That's a separate fact from pretending that the 80s were like
Oh,
this
yes.
glorious time period.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's kind of why I really did like that short story. Plus, I grew up in a kind of old people town. It was just all grandparents and stuff. And I'm just reading
Yeah.
this and I'm like, not good. And I liked your description that you just gave us of Benny because in my head I kept thinking, what does this guy look like? There's so many little, like, it just reminded me of like a chopped up character, and I think that made it scarier thinking of this thing like stalking you everywhere. I don't know, it was horrifying. Loved it.
The most important thing to me for Benny was that it was very clear he enjoyed what he was doing.
Yes.
Without
And
saying a word, you could just see how much he smirks and smiles as he's like making it worse, make it more miserable for them. Like he could have gotten Sierra quicker, and he just sits there. He sits playing like a cat with a mouse.
yes. And it somehow made it even worse to me. Not that he did that, but that the others invoked him to do
Yeah.
that. They were okay with it. Like, you couldn't have come up with something better? Anything? I don't know. Talk to the young children? I don't know. Anyway, you know what I mean? Like, there were so many more
Yeah,
things you could have got to before you got to that point, and they went for directly to the jugular, worst case everything. It was just so much more horrifying.
because that's how they are today as far as that's concerned. People, I remember, what was it, 15 years ago, here near DC, they were installing the mosquito electrical devices that emit like a high pitched sound that only people under a certain age can hear. And it's like that's disgusting because you're just like, oh, kids clear out. We don't want, and it's like, why don't kids, it's this, now we're in this contradictory space where they're all like, why don't kids play outside anymore? Meanwhile, the moment there's like more than two teenagers gathered outside, they call the cops on them.
Exactly. It's kind of hard. You want them to do one thing, but then you literally cut them off at the knees to do anything.
Right.
It's miserable. And then wonder why they're so frustrated and angry and acting out.
Yeah.
But it's besides the point, clearly. It's just, I don't know. This entire book, it was wonderful. I'm amazing. Let's see. This is also a fun one that I ask people. And again, I know you wrote all your books, so you love all of them. Do you have a favorite book that you have written? You yourself, your favorite?
I don't think so. I don't think I have a favorite. They're just too different from each other. It's funny because people ask me like, "Oh, where should I start?" And it's like, that's up to you. That depends on you because I don't feel there's a quintessential Hailey Piper book. Um, I know some readers would disagree. But for me, there isn't really because I feel like they're just kind of going off in these different directions from each other. Like they still have that core, which is me. And yeah, a lot of them accidentally or on purpose are caught have or are cosmic horror, which was not intentional. Um, but yeah, I just don't think there's any one that's like this is the one, this is the idea because I like to do different kinds of things. I'd probably honestly have an easier time with my career if I did just do the same thing again and again. That way I could be like, oh yeah, this is the key one. This is the one that accomplished that one thing better than the other ones, and that's the one. But I'm just like, I can't do that. I've got so many different directions I like to go in, different subgenres I like to explore, or mixing other genres, like whether it's like mixing in romance or mixing in Western, mixing in like, space or sci-fi. There's a couple that are sci-fi, but only one of them set in space. But you get what I mean, like fantasy. Like I want to do different things. I want to explore different things. So I can't just focus on the one like, okay, this is the idea, that's my focus, that's it. It's like, well, that's horror, but horror can be everything, it can get into everything.
I actually like that answer. Of course, I love it when an author has their favorite. Who doesn't? But it feels like when all of them are kind of your favorite, it means you've put so much into all of them. They are your books, they're your creations. I like that.
Yeah, I don't have anything out that I'm not proud of. I can't do it because I would get so anxious if I just kind of threw something out there. Like they all have to be a little piece of me or it's just not worth it.
I do like. So, kind of talking about that, who do you think is like a major inspiration on you when you're writing? And it could be authors, it could be movie directors, pretty much anything. What inspires you?
I think again that ends up being depending on the book.
Ooh,
Um, because I try not to go back to the same well too often. I mean, I think Clive Barker is an easy influence point. I hadn't actually read his work until I was in this for a couple years. Well, because it's funny, people were like kept comparing The Worm and His Kings to The Midnight Meat Train, and I just hadn't read the Books of Blood. I hadn't checked it out yet, and I was like, I really need to because the reason I say that and bring him up in this is because what was the huge influence on me since I was young, and that does kind of creep in a lot is Hellraiser. Because I saw that when I was probably too young to be watching it, but it really changed how I looked at a lot of fiction stuff, how I looked at what reality could be. Um, and that has definitely influenced it, I, I don't think about it while I'm writing the book, writing what I'm doing, but it has influenced me as a person so much that it can't help but be present. Because it suggested that like, what we consider to be solid walls, solid dependable world and reality is not, that it's paper thin. It can be punched through as easily as turning a block on a thing or touching the tone of a music box or something. And that I definitely feel creeps into most of my work where it's just like, yeah, reality is mud. It's not dependable. And the more you expect it to be, the less it's going to be there for you.
that is good. Did you read a lot as a kid, or were you more into movies? Neither.
The funny thing is, when I was younger, I think when I was very, very little, I wanted to make movies, but I would just read a lot of books. Um, so I think becoming an author kind of like was something I got immersed in, like pot frogged into, because just I got very book brained. But yeah, I would read a lot. You know, obviously children's book, Goosebumps, things like that. But I was reading Michael Crichton by age 8. Not understanding all the science and stuff, but I was still reading, like I was reading Jurassic Park and Sphere and Congo. Um,
Fear.
and then like at age 10, I was starting to steal Dean Koontz books from my mom's room and such. So Stephen King was a little later, but yeah, I mean, there was a gap in time where school ruined reading and I wasn't reading books for like 2 or 3 years because the schoolwork got harder, and they were having us read what I considered really boring freaking books. I didn't have time to read stuff I wanted to, and eventually I didn't feel like reading more. I was just like, I'm just going to play video games because like apparently reading isn't going to be fun anymore, so whatever. And then I don't know how old I was, probably 14 or 15, I can't remember. My mom got me just my first Stephen King book. Um, and it was funny because I kind of looked at it as if she got me like a brick, like as she given me a brick for a present. Like, and I was just like, what am I supposed to do with this? Um, but we were waiting to go visit a relative, and I was just sitting, and I had the book on like a desk or end table or something, and I just kind of picked it up and started reading it, and I got sucked in, and I completely forgotten how much I loved reading. So like it was a big deal, like that Stephen King kind of like brought me back to something that I'd forgotten I loved. And then from then on, I was reading again. There were times where I couldn't find stuff to read, and that was kind of before I'd found indie horror. Um, but now it feels like there's so much. Now my TBR is just like I'll never catch up with all the things I want to read, and that's just and like yeah, that feels overwhelming sometimes. But it's like if I think back to several years ago when either I didn't couldn't find stuff to read, or years before that when I'd forgotten that I loved to read. Like compared to that, I'd much rather have a problem with too many books that I do want to read.
I think that exact same thing all the time. I do not make direct eye contact with my digital TBR, but the place that I grew up in was a
That
very
doesn't
small
count. If it's
town.
not on the shelf, it's not taking up shelf space. It doesn't count. You could have infinite books.
Exactly. And when I was younger, I loved to read too, but you didn't have all these options. Like 9 times out of 10, when I would get a bunch of books, I would be at the flea market and there would be a $5 blind box of books, and they're like, "Oh, take
Yeah.
this." So I read so many different things, but horror is definitely my favorite. But it's so fun.
Yeah, and I do read different genres. Like I'll read romance, I read fantasy and sci-fi. It's not as many as horror, but still, it's good to know. One, it's fun. You want to break things up now and then. But two, as an author, it's just good to be kind of like seeing what else is going on, uh, cross-pollinating in a way. As far as genres are concerned. I think that's why I end up mixing other genres in at times, is just because I don't want it to get homogenized.
Absolutely agree. And it makes everything more fun to read. Like horror books are great, straight absolutely nothing but horror is also great, but when you're reading a book that's horror and it's almost got a little bit of romance in there, some fantasy, it even though it's fiction, it makes it more real. Let's see. Oh, do you have any projects that you are working on that you can talk about or you want to, of course?
I don't think I can talk about any of that. I'm writing a book that hopefully will be out in 2028, and I'm about to turn in another manuscript that will be out in 2027. But I
Ooh.
can't discuss either of those since they're not announced yet. And I wouldn't want to discuss one that isn't finished either.
Oh, of
So,
course.
um, so no, I mean, yeah, I can't talk about the stuff that I'm currently editing and writing at the moment.
Are
Um,
you going to be at any conventions
yes, I'm going to
or
be at
events?
StokerCon next month, and I'm going to be at Haunt the Readers at the end of July in Mount Joy, Pennsylvania, and then we'll see what else after that. we're kind of gearing up stuff for the books I have out later this year. So we'll see where I end up.
That is super fun. Are you one of those that really enjoys going to the events and stuff, or not so much? I love the idea and I love going when I get there, but leading up to it, I'm just usually like, did I agree to do this?
Yeah, I'm not really a travel person. I don't really enjoy traveling. If I could just snap my fingers and be somewhere, I'd probably do more events. But as it is, I'm just like, I do like being there. I do like the events themselves. It's just the stress of travel is just a lot for me. So yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag essentially. But I do like being there once I've gotten there though.
I always say when somebody's like, what would be your magic power or your superpower? I'm like, can I just teleport somewhere immediately? That would just take so
Yeah,
much stress away and save money.
it would.
Um, Goodness. Let's see. I had another question I was about to ask you, and my cat just distracted me completely out of the corner of my eye. So I'm going to blame him for that. Do you have any fun hobbies that you do outside of, I know writing's not your hobby, it's your literal job, but like most of that seems to consume authors to where they maybe don't have so many outside hobbies besides writing.
Yeah, I the funny thing is that writing it is in a way the how do I put this? I need to treat it as a hobby because if I treat it as my job, then it won't be fun anymore. So I do kind of continue to treat it as a hobby, but as a hobby I get to do every day. Um, I tend like there was a time where I was kind of struggling with it because I was trying to do like housework, cooking, etc. beforehand and just like okay, I'm gonna get these chores done, clean this and then write and then day job and whatever else. And then I realized I wasn't the thing is if you let that stuff be the priority, then it will take all of your writing time. And I know other women who've dealt with this where it's just like, oh, get all the other stuff done so I don't have to worry about it while I'm writing. Problem is when you try to get everything else done and then write, you're often too exhausted. Whereas if you write first and then do that other stuff, usually it helps unspool whatever like issues you're having with writing. You'll realize things, oh, I left this out, or oh, that's the solution to this problem, or whatever. Like that stuff comes to me more readily when I'm away from the keyboard. But when I'm at the keyboard, I just want to write because I do enjoy it. I love it sounds dorky, but I'm just like, I do love the putting together of sentences. I do love figuring out where paragraphs should break. I do love the rhythm of the words on the page.
I think that shows in your
But
books,
so
honestly.
it's funny because one of my friends was just saying this, calling me out on this yesterday because I was just like, I was telling her something that was going on. It's like, oh, I figured this out with this sentence, and she was like, oh, that's good. You did that while you were writing. It was like, no, I was doing something else. I was just thinking about writing while I was doing that. And she's like, oh, right, because you're always doing that. It's like, yeah, kind of. It's just, but it's fun for me. It's fun to play with in my head. It's fun to play with when I'm typing. These are different things. That's not to say I don't have other hobbies. I do like play video games. I watch movies. I paint. I read. Not much in the way of outdoors hobbies, but still hobbies.
Overrated.
Like I have tattoos. I can't be putting these things out in the sun too much.
Exactly. Protecting your investment.
Exactly.
No, I definitely agree. And I completely understand what you're saying because I read clearly. And I pour a lot into my reviews, and people are like, do you do anything else? And I'm like, but I like doing this. Why would I
Right.
do other things? If it
Right.
was something that I hated doing, then of course, why would I be doing it?
Right. And that's one of those things where it's just like, and I think that just goes back to what I was talking about with like kind of for a few years, school kind of ruined reading for me because I was just like, it became work and then I didn't want to do it anymore. And I think that's just what happens with a lot of work, unfortunately. It's just like because at least in America, I feel like we get so divorced between what we're doing and the satisfaction of what we're doing. Um, like if you put me on a schedule to clean the apartment, I'm going to be frustrated. But if I can just tackle tasks as I see them, that's me like, oh, I did such a good job cleaning that up or whatever.
Agree. No, that absolutely makes perfect sense because it just feels more validating. Because if
Yeah.
you
And
were just going to go work a job, you could just go do anything, you know?
right. And there are jobs that make more money than this. um,
Also that.
but that's not the way it's presented in Hollywood. It's like if you sell one book, you've got a mansion. It's just like I live in an apartment, okay?
Oh my goodness. I remember when I was younger reading and I would think, oh, these authors must all be $1 million riches. And then I'm an adult and I'm like, oh,
All aside from like two people, every author I know is either working a day job or has a spouse that earns enough that they don't have to have a day job and can still do this.
absolutely. Which I guess brings me to my last two questions. And I always switched up the order. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you this semi-serious one now. If you had any wisdom to pass down to authors that are just trying to get into this whole thing, what would it be?
um, I would say you need to write what you want to write. I think there's a lot of grifters who are trying to teach people how to game the system. Like, oh, if you write something that's like this, then that'll, definitely get you in the door and it'll be a bestseller and you're set for life and blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's all bullshit. One, you can try to do that and it might work, but you're going to have the teensiest chance of it working because that's just how the industry is. Um, and you're not going to have enjoyed it at all. You're not going to care about it. So you're not really going to know how to support it either, because that is a lot on us, on the authors. We do need to carry a lot of the promotional stuff these days. The publisher may or may not help you. It depends on your publisher, but it is a lot on us. And so the other side of it is like you need to write what you want and you need to write what you love, because that love is going to that enthusiasm is going to
From
carry into
burning
the work.
completely out,
Right.
also.
It's going to make you more motivated to keep coming back to this and finishing it. And that's like the big first step, is actually finishing something. There's a lot of people who will be like, a lot of young authors who are just getting this like, I've planned out my 7 book, fantasy series, and I've got like a whole like portfolio about the characters and blah blah blah. It's like, that's not a book being written. That's you planning a series Bible for a TV show. Um, and it's not going to help you write that first book because you're too much in love with this planning. It's not something that's exciting you enough that's getting you to sit there and write pages.
And you
And
not get that
obviously,
first book out, and then what's going to push you to get the second one because you've
right.
just got a plan and nothing
And
else.
then the other problem is that publishers don't really want to do 7 book fantasy series anymore.
Not
That's not,
so bad.
you can barely ever get a trilogy these days. You get a duology, you're lucky. Um, but the thing is, that's my point with it. You need to do what you love, because even if it doesn't get picked up by somebody somewhere big, at least you created something you loved. Like the love isn't wasted. And that's the most important part, because that's going to reach somebody somehow.
Oh, yeah.
Like my first books are all with small press. Um, because that's where I went with them and that's where it made sense. They're weird freaking books. I in my first traditional published book was my 10th book. Like that's just how it is sometimes. Everybody has a different path, but my thing is just like, I wouldn't have gotten there if I hadn't been motivated by the fact that I love stories. I love these stories. I wanted to work on them to be able to get to that point.
There's so much rejection before you get there that you have to hear no over and over and over and
Right.
over. So, like, if you don't love what you're doing, when is
Right.
that going to be too much? The first, the
Right.
second time? So, and like you said, it took you 10 to get traditionally published. Like, quite a bit of work of your soul you're pouring into these books.
Right. It's your time, it's your effort, it's things you care about. It should be things you care about because yeah, you could tool something together. It's like I have cross-referenced all the graphs and I understand everything, like I've cracked the code, blah blah blah, and like there are people who spend this was not something I experienced, but a friend of mine, she was doing an event and a guy came up to her and he was asking her questions and she'd answer them and he'd tell her, well, that's wrong because I took this course online by this guy and it cost like $4,000 and it was like this is how this works and such. And it's like, well, all you did was get scammed.
That's
So
insane.
there's no code to crack, there's no secret formula. It's just doing the work.
Born into it until you have something that you're proud of, and then pushing,
You
pushing,
keep
pushing.
it's all pushing. Like that's all it really is. And I mean, the difference between people who are getting somewhere with it and people who aren't tends to be who keeps going.
Good. I like that advice. Now, for a less serious question, if you were stuck on a deserted island and you could only have one book with you for the rest of your life, what would it be?
That's not gonna work. It's not gonna work out real well.
I'm a cheater, and the last time I answered this, I'm like, I'm taking my e-reader with batteries that never die.
Yeah, see, that's what you'd have to do because I'm like, no matter how good a book is, eventually you're gonna get sick. I will say, I read Her Body and Other Parties like once a year. And so I suppose at least that way, yeah, if the next year I could still come back to it until it falls apart, I suppose.
No, I
Um,
agree with that. I do reread some books, but I do agree. If I was stuck on a deserted island for 15 years and had to reread the same book over again, I would probably just be done with it after like first 6 months, maybe. Even shorter, probably
you'd
than
have
that.
to
But
find you'd have to find something else to do so that's
I
like the
would be
book is
delusional making my own book at that point.
right. The book has to be something you come back to, not something that you're just constantly sitting there reading. I suppose you'd be too busy trying to survive.
Also,
Um,
that
to have a lot of time to sit there and be like, oh, this book's not really hitting the same after the seventh read.
no longer invested where anybody dies. You're just like, just get it on, get over with
the
it.
my other problem with that type of question is that there's a Stephen Graham Jones story that I'm blanking on the title. I do think it's something like ten things for to take with you when you're stranded on a desert island. I don't think that's exactly the title, but something like that. And it's essentially about this guy who is in a shipwreck and he ends up on an island, but it's barely an island. It's like a little scrap of rock in the middle of the ocean. There's just not like there's a little water from rainfall that's pooled in the center, but like that's it. Like it's not much bigger. It's not much bigger than a room. And weird things start to float ashore, like crash up against the rocks. Not stuff from the ship. Like at first he's like, oh, maybe this was from the ship or from another ship or whatever, but then he starts like they're just weird things. They're just really strange things. And like he starts to notice a familiar pattern and it has to do with a magazine that he filled out when he was like 10 that had a questionnaire on the back that was like 10 things you'd bring with you on a desert island and you
Oh,
sent it into like it was like a competition. You sent it in and if they liked yours the best you won a prize. And just it's a messed up little story. And so like I
I'm
can't
gonna
hear a
be looking that
question
up.
like that without thinking of that story anymore.
It's funny because I always ask these questions, usually as like a thing for work, icebreaker, blah blah blah. But like
Yeah.
in the back of my head, every time I ask, I'm always thinking of Survivor Type from Stephen King about the doctor that wrecks on the island, and I'm just like stressing out thinking about it.
Oh,
But
yeah. There's a lot of stressful like they just had what was it, Send Help,
send help.
the Sam Raimi movie. Yeah. There's another I can't remember. I want to say it was Mira Grant, but I might be wrong. I feel like I'm wrong. I feel like it was somebody else, but there's a story where there a plane had crashed and these three people had washed up on an island. And I guess I'm going to spoil the story, but since I don't remember the title or the author, it doesn't matter. If somebody stumbles upon it, they'll be surprised. Like, hey, it's that story Hailey Piper was talking about. Um, but essentially, like the it was a woman, it was two women and a child. None of them knew each other, and the main character realized that the other woman was carrying like a disease that had been manufactured in the lab, and she was like flying to somewhere that she could like she'd injected it on the flight, and she was flying somewhere to spread it and like essentially end the world. And but then the plane crashed, and so helicopters were coming to assist the three, and the one woman dies from the disease, and the woman other woman and the child caught it, and there's helicopters coming to rescue them, and the woman essentially just like has to wave them off. Like she makes the decision to wave them off because like, no, you have to leave us. And like I forget how she communicates, but she writes in the sand, or she like writes virus or something in the sand. And the kid is like, are they coming to save us? And she's like, no, they can't save us. Like, and it's just like they watch the rescue helicopters leave the island. And it's just like, that's such, I was just like, oh my God.
Too many bad things happen on islands, I think, is the point here. But yeah, that one. I'm gonna have to look that up after we get off this video.
I don't know how. I'm so sorry because like it was in an anthology and I cannot remember which
That's
anthology.
The worst thing for me. I'll start telling somebody about it, and I'm like, I'm sorry, it's an anthology I read 15 years ago. So
it was like it was. I feel like it was an Ellen Datlow anthology. Unfortunately, that doesn't narrow it down.
No, because she's one of my favorites. Like even the ones that she does over things that's not even horror, I'm like, I'll give it a chance. Let's go.
It was definitely a horror anthology, so I can narrow it down that much. But I don't know if it was in the ocean horror one that she did a few years ago, or if it was in one of the best, like the year's best horror ones. So I like there's any one of like 18 books it could be.
If anybody wonders why my next set of reviews are going to be ocean island related, it's because I'm just reading through these. But no. That's so funny. But I'm actually going to look it up. If I find the story, I will make sure I message you and let you know what it is, and everybody else, of course.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you want to talk about that I haven't asked, or anything like that?
I could mention the books I have coming out later this year.
Yes, please.
So on September 15th, I have out This Movie Doesn't End the Way We Want. That's coming from Titan, and it's about in 1994, three girls go to the movies and only one of them comes out. 30 years later, the survivor finds the movie isn't done with her yet. So
I saw you post about that recently, and I was very excited about it. I love mysterious, just what happened, especially when you find out later.
Yeah, oh yeah, and you will find out. It's not good. Not to spoil anything. That's This Movie Doesn't End the Way We Want, September 15th. And then in October, I have something very different. She Isn't Herself Tonight, which is more of a literary horror. It's kind of what would we compare? It was kind of like Saint Maud by way of the X-Files. It's about a woman who she's been getting abducted by aliens since she was a child, and she finally tells when she's 30, she finally tells her boyfriend about it because she's pretty sure it's about to happen again. And he kicks her out of their house, and it breaks up with her. And like after that, her life just spirals out of control with body horror and surreal stuff she can't explain, and just chaos.
Excited for that as well.
So
Gonna take note.
That's coming out October 27th from Saga.
That sounds like an exciting couple of books coming up.
Well, thank you.
Anything else coming up that you're excited about? Events? I know we already talked about Stoker and
yeah, those are the two events on that I can talk about at the moment. But yeah, and I can't talk about those anthologies yet, unfortunately, because
hey, this is as exciting as it is. Now I'm just going to write down Hailey has some anthos coming out.
Yeah, I'm like, if I don't know when they're announcing that them or that I'm in them, so it's just gonna have to wait, unfortunately.
But thank you for telling me or us that you're going to be in some, because at least it's something to look forward to. That is exciting.
Yeah, I think the only one I can mention is I think I they changed the title a couple times, so I'm not sure if I've got 100%. It's like I think it's Where the Devil Stands or Where Devils Stand. That's being edited by Johnny Compton. Um,
Ooh.
so I will have a story in that. I don't know if that comes out this year or next year from Titan. And then I have a story in Haunted Minds, which is a possession anthology, and that's coming out from Evil Twin, I think, next year. Those two I can talk about. The other ones that I have in mind, I can't talk about yet.
Those are exciting. I've seen the lineup for the Haunted Minds one, and it's going to be a very good one, I think.
Yeah, no, it's got a lot of it's very star-studded.
Well, thank you so, so much for spending time talking to me, talking to us about your books, things that go
Thank you for
into them,
having
all
me.
that. It's very fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's great talking to you.